I'm going to get it started with a question that someone asked me. One of our attendees this morning, and this is a question for all the panel, so maybe each of you can take a crack at this question and give it a minute or two, which is, would each of you state the one major public relations failure of the pro-Israel world? Something that might relate to your own area of expertise, something that the pro-Israel world, and BZD is part of it, that we could be doing better. Galit, if you want to start, and there's a...
Well, we usually don't talk about failures. They're always successful.
What we can do better, not a failure.
Okay, one thing that we find very important and I think should be done and should attract the attention of the people sitting in this audience. I'm looking around and with all due respect, I see a lot of people who are 50 and older. I hardly see any young people in the audience. And hello, young men. We definitely feel that more young people, the younger generation of the Jewish community should be more involved in not necessarily pro-Israel activity, but maybe more involved in Jewish life in general, and to learn about Israel. And I'm talking even about graduates of the Jewish education system. And I agree with something that was said here, that they arrive to college and with us, maybe you mentioned that. They come to college and they come to university and they don't know the facts about Israel. And when they face a situation on campus in which they have to provide information, then they simply don't know how to cope with it. In many cases, at least that was the situation about a year or 2 years ago, and it is improving. So definitely an extra effort should be done in order to attract young men and women.
Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I think we're just going to leave, let Galit just have you answer that question to make sure we get to everyone's questions, the audience as well. So let's hold that point. And Robert, a brief question, please. No speeches, just a brief question.
Absolutely. Christians support Israel. To the guy that was fascinating. I'm dating a Christian woman, and yes, she supports Israel, but she also, been there 3 times, she also wants to convert me. How do we say thank you for supporting Israel, but we have no interest in being converted? And to whoever wants to answer on the panel, someone came up to me at work.
Well, let me, Robert, let's keep it at that one question. We have other people waiting. Thank you for the question, David.
Okay.
Good job. I enjoyed your speech.
Thank you very much. So, how do you say thank you for your support for Israel, but no thank you, I'm not converting? You say thank you for your support for Israel, but no thank you, I'm not converting. But let me note this. Let me note this because I think it's one of the concerns people have about Christian support for Zionism. There are a few that are typically voiced every time I speak, and I welcome any concerns or questions to address them. One of the concerns, usually number 2 on the list, is don't they do this just to convert us? In other words, they get in through the front door by supporting Israel, then they try to let Jesus in through the back door, right? It's all about converting us. Why? Because for most of our history, it's been all about converting us. Let me say this. There is a name for people who believe you must accept Jesus to go to heaven. The name for those people is Christian. That's Christian theology, folks. That's what they believe. So you're going to hear from time to time, if they like you, they care about you, they might try to talk to you about Jesus. Here's the interesting distinction, though. Those who tend to know us best and are closest with us, because they work with us on behalf of Israel, tend to know our sensitivities and sensibilities better than those who don't. So those Christians who don't know us very well will try to talk to us about Jesus the way they do to their Hindu neighbors and their Muslim neighbors and their non-born-again Christian neighbors. They don't realize that when they do it to us, they're rubbing salt in a still pretty raw wound. Those Christians who know us better because they work with us for Israel tend to know our sensitivities and sensibilities, and they tend not to go there. They tend to work with us where we agree on Israel, and then they have enough respect for us and our faith and knowledge of our sensitivities to know not to go down the route of conversion. So it's actually the opposite of what people think. It's not that they're supporting Israel because there's an agenda to convert us. is that through their support of Israel, they tend to understand us better, and therefore they're less likely to try to convert us.
Just something to add to this. They may want to convert us, but we don't have to convert.
Next question, please. Next question for the panel.
What does the Israeli Arab community plan on to for this peace process?
The question is, what can the Arab-Israeli community do for the peace process? Or maybe Natasha, you want to speak to that a little bit, or maybe more specifically, the support or lack of support within the Arab-Israeli community for the process.
Can you hear me with this? Okay, I didn't have time to address the inner challenges that Israel faces now. I can only say that unfortunately, the relationship between the Arab-Israeli community and the current Israeli government are not so bright, because in the past several weeks there were several bills passed in Knesset that were received very negatively at the Arab community in Israel. Actually, they interpreted it as an attempt to discriminate against them. So I do not see this community too active, let's say, to promote peace process. They're, I think, in a very uncomfortable position from the beginning, because they're seen, as possible traitors by their Palestinian peers at the territories, and in Israel they're seen with the suspicion. So usually they keep kind of low profile on this issue, and sometimes we do see, for example, there was a case of a member of Knesset joining the Turkish flotilla, and it raised an outrage in Israel. So to see them now as a possible bridge, to promote peace, unfortunately, at least with this government, it doesn't really work. And frankly, I cannot even imagine the Kadima party, which is more center. I don't see Tziti Livni inviting Arab parties to sit in the government. So right now, I don't see any prospect.
Okay, Rachel and Galit want to address that question as well.
I don't think we can expect much from the Arab population now in Israel, or the Arab population surrounding Israel. And I don't necessarily think that the Israeli government, this or another, should be held responsible for it, because they are even strongly than before telling us that they want, or telling Israel that they want to destroy Israel. So I don't see, and the way things are going now, are moving now, it doesn't seem to get more peaceful. So I don't expect much peace for the near future.
You asked about the Israeli Arabs, and I have to tell you that even though there are many difficulties when it comes to allocation of budget, for example, governmental budget to the Arab sector, and there are a lot of inherent problems in Israeli society when it comes to Jewish and Arab relations. We see a growing number of Arabs, of Druze and Bedouin soldiers serving in the Israeli army. We see many of them join the civil service, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, other governmental ministries. And when it comes to the economic situation and to the level of education, then the Israeli Arabs are much more educated and well off than their brethren in other countries, in other Arab countries in the region. When it comes especially to the Christian community, then Israel is the only place in the Middle East in which the number of Arab Christians is actually growing. And many of them are immigrating from the other Arab countries and from the Palestinian Authority because they contract so many difficulties there, not in Israel. So when we talk about dialogue in Israel, then definitely this is something that should be integrated into the Israeli education system. More attention should be given to that. When it comes to cooperation in the United States, then we, the Israeli Embassy, encourages
interfaith dialogue between Jewish groups, Jewish audiences, and Muslim audiences. I know that there is such an ongoing dialogue in the greater Baltimore area, in Washington as well. So I think the solution lies in exchange of information and in dialogue. This is the key.
Next question.
One general thing, to say one sentence, that in my opinion, Israel did not win any war against the Arabs.
Okay,
What
what
is
your question, please?
It's a battle, that's all. If the leaders in Israel will have this in their mind, then they will understand that peace is the most important thing. And I know.
Do you have a question?
The question is, Benjamin Netanyahu, in my opinion.
Do you have a question, sir?
That's the question.
Okay.
That's the question. What is actually did Benjamin Netanyahu wants peace, except his self-interest to be prime minister? That's the question. I would like to know what it is.
The question is, I guess, what motivates, I'll simplify it, but make it very broad. What motivates Netanyahu?
Not motivates.
No. What is your question?
What he did for peace? What did he do to advance?
What has Netanyahu done to advance peace during his current tenure?
Yeah.
Who wants to take that one? Natasha.
Okay.
Okay, it depends who you ask in Israel, because if you ask Prime Minister Netanyahu, he will probably say that he was basically the first one to offer settlement freeze, and then the Palestinians didn't come to the table when they had an opportunity, and they procrastinated until it was he wasn't able to cooperate with his coalition. If you ask, of course, left wing, they would say that he did nothing, and I think the Palestinians and the Arabs would agree. The better question, I think, is to ask whether he is able to do something now or whether he should do something now, and it's a big question that involves not only Israel and the Palestinians now, but the whole region, I believe. Just one point is, many people are saying, like when President Peres was now in Washington, he said that we welcome the Arab democracies and we welcome this opportunity for peace. But the problem is that I think that in the short term, we won't see democracies, and even if we will see democracies, I'm not sure that they will say, Kumbaya, welcome our Jewish brothers, let's make peace, because the popular opinion in the neighboring countries are not in favor of Israel or the United States.
Okay, we're going to try to get to everyone within the limited time, so let's go to the next question.
For those of you who deal with J Street or similar organizations, make them aware that you're dealing with the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those who caused the massacres in Hebron in 1929. And
Is your question about J Street?
You're making them aware of the people you're dealing with, and also making them aware that you learned in the 1930s that appeasement does not pay.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about J Street. Maybe Avi, do you want to talk about Stand With Us and your relations with other organizations?
Stand With Us usually does not take positions against any other organizations. One of the things that we did do when J Street first had their first conference about, it was about a year and a half ago, we released a statement of concern that we had based on statements that J Street has made, based on things that they have said, and we sent it to our membership, and we actually sent it to the gala committee that was for the J Street conference, which I think consisted of about 160 congressmen and senators. And we sent to them, and many of them, not because of what we sent to them, but many of them in the end did back away from putting their name on the committee. And one of the things that J Street did after their conference was that they sent out an email to all their members and everyone who came to the conference and said, we thank you all for coming, we need you now to help us go to the next level, and we need your support to defend against small far-right organizations like Stand With Us that release racist statements and comments. Everything we did was based on the facts that they did. Everything was based on statements that they made. And one of the things that we tell our members and we tell students is we tell them to look at what J Street is saying, but also to look at their actions. You can say you're a pro-Israel group, but then how do you then tell members of Congress to vote, to not sign a letter that calls for the Palestinian Authority to end incitement? Because the letter didn't also call for the end of settlements. How do you not unequivocally condemn Hamas when they're firing tens of thousands of rockets against Israel? When Israel goes into Gaza to defend that, how are you not able to define who is the aggressor and who is the people that are acting in self-defense? These are the things that we're telling our members about J Street.
I'm sure our other panelists would like to speak to it as well, but I want to make sure we get to everyone. So let's get to the next question.
My question is for Mr. Borg. I am so grateful for the Christian Zionists, but they're primarily the charismatics, the evangelical. How did we lose the so-called mainstream Christian church in the United States?
Thank you. I appreciate the question because it is a complex world, the Christian world, with many, many divisions, subdivisions. As the questioner pointed out, most of the people who embrace what I call this theology of the righteous Gentile, this theology that still sees the Jewish people as blessed by God, tend to be charismatics, Pentecostals, evangelicals. They tend not to be part of what we call the mainline churches. The mainline Protestant churches are less literal in their biblical interpretation, more prone to spiritualizing the Bible. And in fact, when it comes to this issue of Israel, they tend to still embrace largely replacement theology. Again, it doesn't mean they'll be against Israel. There are plenty of mainline Protestants who are very supportive of Israel. It means there's no theological underpinning that would make these churches pro-Israel churches. You're not going to walk into a Presbyterian church and see the American flag and the Israeli flag, the way you do in many evangelical churches. Many evangelical churches, this is part and parcel of the theology supporting Israel. Which means that stripped of any theological motive to support Israel, stripped of any theological underpinnings to support Israel, Presbyterians and other mainline Protestants are free to go with the general trends in America. And a trend that I fear in America, and I think is hard to deny exists in America, is the trend that those who consider themselves progressives, those who consider themselves concerned with the underdog, the little guy, are increasingly becoming pro-Palestinian, whereas a generation or two ago they were largely pro-Israel. You know, it used to be the Israeli David versus the Arab Goliath. Now it's the Israeli Goliath versus the Palestinian David. And so they're free to go with the flow, and I'm afraid the flow is not a good one these days when we look at self-defined progressives. So that's the problem we face in a lot of churches that don't have this literal theology driving them to have a pro-Israel start point. And therefore, we've got to skip right to the merits. And we have to say, okay, you might not be predisposed to be with us, but still, you're worried about the underdog, you're worried about justice, okay. Israel's cause is just. And when you look at it the correct way, Israel is the underdog. But it means we have to overcome, I think, what is a generally emerging consensus out there. Ours is the hard work of challenging the mainstream. Ours is the hard work of challenging what they're increasingly receiving from the mainstream media. So it's a big challenge. But one thing we learned is that you have two choices. Either someone is predisposed to be with us, and their reaction, let's say, to the flotilla, will be, I'm sure Israel didn't do anything wrong, but explain to me why they didn't. Or someone whose theology or the worldview makes them initially against us. And they'll say, I know Israel did something wrong. In either case, if you can't muster the facts and can't muster the argument to make people understand why Israel did what they did, your enemy will remain an enemy, and your potential friend won't be a very effective friend at all. So no matter how someone approaches this issue, ultimately, if we don't know the facts and get the facts out there, we're not serving the cause very well.
Next question.
The last question took half my question away, so I
All right, so you got the other half to go.
Okay. And then the next question is, what regions of the country, this is from Mr. David Frog, are friendliest to the state of Israel, would you say, in your travels?
Well, Jerry Falwell used to say that the Bible Belt is Israel's safety belt in America, and there's some truth to that. Any part of the country rich with evangelicals tends to be quite sympathetic to Israel. But here's the beautiful thing about the evangelical community in America. They are everywhere. We have evangelicals in Manhattan and in Los Angeles, but we also have them everywhere else where there might not be a strong Jewish community. That's why this alliance with Christian friends of Israel and Jewish friends of Israel really is beautifully complementary. You know, from time to time, we've taken a position similar to that of AIPAC, let's say in support of sanctions against Iran. What a beautiful partnership. AIPAC could get us a lot of congressional districts in a lot of states where they're well organized and dug in, but then we could fill in all of those congressional districts in all of those states where there wasn't a strong pro-Israel community or commitment. And for a lot of members of Congress on the Hill, it wasn't that they were against sanctions. The problem was 100 bills crossed their desk each day. Why should they take time out to care about the sanctions bill? Well, once there was a core cadre of pro-Israel Christians in their district saying, we're watching you and this issue is important to us and we want you to do this, that made all the difference. We were able to really significantly increase the number of co-sponsors on Iran sanctions and eventually get the bill passed. So it's a great partnership precisely because evangelicals are everywhere. By some estimates, 1 in 4 Americans are evangelical. It's a lot of people.
Toby.
Thank you. Avi, I appreciate the fact that you're going to college campuses. But prior to going to college campuses, what happens? Where do these kids get their education? And what I'm most concerned about is the liberal general media. How do we protect ourselves against them?
Like I mentioned in my talk, that when students go to college campuses, many of them are like a deer in the headlight. They don't have the background, they don't have the education and facts that they need in order to make Israel's case and have an intelligent conversation about Israel when they get to the college campuses. Many of this does come from the fact that there are many high schools and even elementary schools and other schools and educational institutions that don't have courses or don't have programs that talk about Israel. You know, every school, in New York, we have something called the Salute to Israel Parade on Fifth Avenue. You got 1 million people that are watching the parade and tens of thousands of people that are marching in the parade. And all the schools, around the country will have pictures of Herzl and Ben Gurion. Many of them will have the picture of the paratroopers that are at the Kotel, 1967. But many of them lack a consistent education that is needed. Many of them don't have a Zionism course. Many of them don't have courses about Israel. And this is something that Stand With Us and many other organizations are trying to fill. We have a booklet called Israel 101, which goes through the history, the geography, the facts that everyone needs to know about Israel. This was made into a curriculum for high school students. It was actually translated into different languages. It's something that's on our website. It's also made into a PowerPoint presentation. Because we know that the visuals are always something that are attractive and are easy to use. We have presentations that talk about Israel beyond the conflict. A lot of my presentations and a lot of the things that we spoke about were about Israel's politics, the Israeli conflict, but many of the things that people don't know are the positive things about Israel, or we like to call Israel beyond the conflict, Israel's innovations, Israel's contributions to the world. These are things that we continue to tell students, to teach people all over the world, that Israel is not just this place of conflict, of war, of politics. Israel is a beautiful country, it's a diverse country, it's a pluralistic society. It's the only country in the Middle East where anyone can live how they want to live. One of the things that we did, we took European parliamentarians to Israel. This is the first time that some of them went to Israel. And they told us that when they got there, they were expecting to be told to duck down, and they were expecting to see Israeli soldiers shoot Palestinian kids in the streets. So to talk about the media aspect, a lot of this does come from the media, and one of the reasons why all these anti-Israel events and speakers have been spread so fast is largely through the media. And one of the organizations...
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, and I apologize, but we're running into Yossi's time, so think what we'll do is, let's take the next 2 questions and then the next 2, and then we'll try to get everyone. So Barry, why don't you first start with yours?
If I may add one sentence?
Sure, go ahead.
One sentence, please. Okay, about young people, one sentence. The first thing, if you have an opportunity to send the kids to Israel with birthright, then do it. It's a wonderful opportunity for them. They,
Before birthright, which is what you say.
so there are programs for high school students, and I know that here in the Washington area and Baltimore area, there are people who already invite Israeli speakers, other speakers to schools to talk about Israel, and it is very important to have a course, at least one course, about Israel, and then send them to Israel. They'll have the time of their lives, and there will be guides to accompany them and to make sure they don't get in trouble. And the other thing is that it is natural with teenagers that they have difficult questions when it comes to Israel. They don't have to say amen after everything that has to do with Israel. Allow them to ask difficult questions and be willing as parents to answer these questions and to get them involved and open up and discuss even the most difficult issues.
Okay, Barry?
Thanks to all of you. With regards to young people, stand with us actively, that's the operative word, stand with us actively, recruit for their various issue stances from the Christian Zionist or from the Christian community on campus also. And a corollary to that is, for Mr. Bragg, what is the demographics of the evangelical community look like? Is it mainly middle-aged and above people, or is there a lot of younger people coming up? Next generation.
Okay, let's get the next question as well.
This is for Natasha. On the hit of Toby said, why don't we have more attractive, well-versed English-speaking people representing Israel's point of view to the Gentile world? The Arabs do.
Okay.
They certainly do. And I did talk to Israelis and they said it's up to us because the CNN and other media do not accept Israelis to speak.
Thank you. Let's start with that question, Natasha. I think the question was for you about having more, that's for Natasha, right? Right. The question was, why doesn't Israel have more English-speaking representatives in the public speaking on behalf of Israel and making Israel's case?
Well, first of all, Israel, I think, is sometimes criticized that we do have the Minister of Hasbara. Some people are saying that it's like something that you have in communist countries that is supposed to be responsible for propaganda. But we do feel the lack of people who can speak for Israel in fluent English, and I think sometimes they are not invited. Sometimes they hear. I know some speakers that when they go to CNN, they say, very precisely that we do not want, when we talk, pictures of slain Palestinian children on the background, because sometimes it is done for them. For example, former ambassador at the UN, Gabriela Shalev, she experienced it during the operation during the flotilla operation in Gaza, and it was very unpleasant to see. So even if you do have Israeli speakers, sometimes their views are distorted by this background, or because some people are just attacking them. No, it's there are more advantages than disadvantages to have a democracy, but there are problems.